Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Sports Talk with Broads. We are broadcasting live from the Manscaped Man Cave. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BROD at manscaped.com. Glenn Rivers is your Philadelphia 76ers head coach, and it's still weird to say. I like it a lot, but it doesn't feel natural yet. And shame on the Sixers organization for putting together a press conference and the audio being gross. You couldn't hear a damn thing. So what I decided to do to grab audio for this podcast is I went around and heard him speak and get interviewed by other people, not so much the press conference by the Sixers, but I had to sneak around other interviews and grab the audio from there so we can react to what Glenn Rivers said about this team, why he chose Philadelphia, what he said about specific players, what he said about Ben Simmons and the lack of shooting. Does he think Ben Simmons really needs to shoot? Interesting question. Well, we will absolutely get into that. I hate that I have to continue to go down this road, but I want to pump it into some people's brains because sometimes people hear what they want to hear and they don't take the full context out. I promise I won't do this every single time I speak about an NBA coach. The NBA coach has value. I don't think it has as much value as others do. But in this league, I think the NBA coach has value. I just don't think it is as obnoxious as other fans out there. All right? So with that being said, keep that in mind. I think what Doc Rivers brings to the table is an upgrade over Brett Brown. I think Doc Rivers and his personality and his tenure throughout the NBA as a whole is valuable to certain players on this roster. There's a new voice. You needed a new voice. And when you get that new voice, specifically early, there's a shock factor. You need to prove this guy what you are. You need to, as a player, show Doc Rivers, I can play. This is who I am. This is my personality out there on the basketball floor. And that's going to bring a different level of intensity right from the jump when training camp actually begins. And let's be realistic. When you look at Ben Simmons, when you look at Joel Embiid, they need a smack in the ass. They need fire lit under them. And when you grab such a powerful voice like Doc Rivers, that's the road you need to go down to get the best opportunity to light that fire underneath of both of their asses. So there's so much to react to out of Doc. I can't wait. This is going to be super fun. Let's start off nice and simple when it comes to why the 76ers. Why, Doc Rivers, did you choose the Philadelphia 76ers?
I think they have a chance to win. Just point blank. I looked around. It was the one job that I would have taken if offered. Other than that, you're right. I was going to go hit golf ball, go do some announcing, and just sit back and relax and wait for a good job. There's several jobs that, in the NBA, and several team names that you want your name affiliated with. The 76ers are one of them, right? And then when you look at Joel and Ben, you start thinking, you know what? This is something special starting here. And yeah, we have work to do. But it's good work. It's not bad work.
A couple things there. Point blank, he thinks that this team can win. He looks at this roster and he likes it. I think that you need to tweak some things. Realistically, you don't just bring in Doc Rivers and boom, all of your worries are gone. Very similar to Joe Girardi. Oh, let's get rid of Gabe Kapler. Oh, let's get Joe Girardi. And guess what? Your team still stunk because your roster still had flaws. Well, with this roster, I think that there are still a ton of flaws. But I like the fact that, hey, he comes in here with the mentality of you have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, which he discussed that they still have work to do. Let's look at that and acknowledge the fact that Doc Rivers sees potential in these two players. And if he thinks he can put his fingerprints on this roster, he thinks he can make it work. To be fair, all coaches feel that way. No matter what sport, no matter what level, a coach looks at a roster and goes, I think I can fix that. And it's not that simple. I think Doc will provide positives for this team, but I don't think it's very simple. It's going to be hard, and he sort of alluded to that when he stated, we got work to do. Now, he talked about Philadelphia as a whole, because I think it's interesting that he saw the Philadelphia 76ers, he saw their logo, he saw what they're all about, and he opted in. He could have hit golf balls. He could have retired. He still has money coming in from the Los Angeles Clippers. It's easy to sit back and go, hold on a second, let me cash in those checks. You're telling me I can do nothing and just put my feet up and enjoy life? Of course I'd sign up for that. But then the 76ers come crawling in, and he goes, hold on a second, why don't we see what they have to say? Why don't we test the water? And within days, bang, he's hired. So why Philadelphia, the sports town?
It's great. It's sports town, right? And so it's a very competitive sports town that wants to win. I'm competitive. I think it's a great fit.
I think it's a great fit, too. And here's why. Outside of X's and O's, which we will get to as he talks about that a little later, and outside of his voice, which I clearly admire and I appreciate, and I think that's going to be a difference in the locker room, he has coached in Boston. East Coast cities are different. I actually saw reports that this playoff series, Boston fans were so upset with Brad Stevens, they were screaming to fire him and hire Kendrick Perkins as the head coach because people actually heard him speak on ESPN and thought he was such a genius describing the play that was a better fit than Brad Stevens. And that's why I laugh when you hear about Stan Van Gundy and you hear about Mark Jackson from fans in this city, because they just get so fascinated with what they hear from a very generic X and O standpoint sitting on the sidelines, that you just think, oh, this guy can coach and be this magnificent, insanely talented coach, and that's not really the case. But being in an East Coast city before and understanding the pressure, it's different. It's just not even close to being the same. People are nuts here. They are wired differently. We are not normal. Well, I'm not going to tie myself into everybody else because I know I'm crazy, but then there's the irrational fans that are 500 million times worse than me, which is crazy to think about because I am a nut job to a degree. But there's people who are 3 billion times worse than me. This city is just built differently. East Coast cities, when it comes to sports, they're not real life. It's honestly like a nightmare scenario if things are going wrong for your franchise. And you can see that with all the Eagles players tweeting pretty much being on the other side of the fan base right now. It's like the players and the fans are going head to head. But getting back to the point here with Doc Rivers. The Clippers, they're not the Lakers. They're out in LA. They had a lot of hype this year, but you don't get the same media presence. You don't get the same intensity being in the Clippers organization. The Sixers are different, and I just value what he did in Boston, and I value what he experienced in terms of media, in terms of the fan base, in terms of how well you need to be or you are going to be on the hot seat. I put that in perspective with this being one of the biggest hires in 76ers history. This coaching hire, whoever they decided to pick, this will be the difference in how you view the process. This is so big that if you go down the wrong path, you now look at the last however many years of the Sixers and you want to spit at it, slap it in the face, kick it in the gut. But if you pick the right guy and then you go down a road that leads to success and Ben Simmons operates differently and Joel Embiid takes his game to the next level, well, then you look at it and go, hold on a second, that was so worth it. Look what we got out of that. So this hire will set the tone for the definition of the process. The question, did the process work? Which I think is so silly because it's obvious it did, because you got Doc Rivers here because of the talent. You got Doc Rivers here because, well, he looks at this spot and he looks at these two stars in the making and go, well, I can win here. So yes, the answer is it worked because look at the type of talent that you have. All right, so from here, I'm trying to go in order a bit on how he was answering these questions. One of the conversations throughout this city all the time is, can Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid work? Another laughable question, in my opinion, but Doc Rivers has an answer.
Well, let's start with this. In the games that they played in over their careers, they've won 65% of them. So there's already success when they play together. So you have that. That's what you start with.
65% of the games, they win. That's not a fluke. No, I think you can critique these players. I don't think, and let's be realistic, that was with Brett Brown. And we know how certain people feel about Brett Brown in this city. I'm not as harsh as other individuals. I don't think he was perfect by any means. I thought he had flaws, but I'm not in the crowd of, this guy was the worst NBA coach in the history of every single coach ever. And you know how those people be, obnoxious, insane, and can't be rational at times. But 65% of the games together, and if you're telling me, if you are one of those people who thought Brett Brown was the most hideous coach in NBA history, the fact that these two players won 65% of their games with a coach who is apparently the worst in the NBA, then sign me up for having these two players on my roster any single day of the week. So I'm sure that there's Brett Brown haters out there who also think Ben Simmons is just a guy who, he can't shoot, he can't play at all. Well, then your 2 points aren't correlating because they win 65% of their games together. Do you get my point? So let's dive deeper into Ben Simmons. This one is interesting, and he goes on, he gets pushed back a bit about Ben Simmons. We'll start with his original comment on Ben the player.
Well, I'm going to start with Ben. It's funny, since I've taken the job, how many times I've heard about how he shoots, where he shoots, and I've always been a coach of scoring, right? I don't look at where a guy is shooting, how they're shooting, but if we average 120 points a night, right, and we're in the top 5 in offense, is anyone really going to care if Ben is shooting, not shooting? All they care about is scoring, and that's all my teams have always cared about. We will figure it out in the best way to play him. I just look at him as this dominating figure at his position that can play at a pace and with power more than anyone else can at his position. And I want to use him there as much as possible.
I love that answer. I love the ending of that answer specifically, talking about how dominant he can be. Look at his size, at his position. It's unreal what he can provide with that body structure. And it's true. It's something that I've been discussing for quite some time. There's a reason why I can't give up on this kid, regardless of shooting or not. He is arguably the best defender 1 through 5 in the entire league. He can guard all-stars. He can guard superstars. He can guard a ton of players in this league at any size. It is magnificent. I can't give up on Ben Simmons because his ceiling to me is just way too damn high. Now, the shooting, he talks about, people are so fascinated with the shooting. Doc Rivers wants to find out what's the best way to utilize him with his skill set. Does that mean he is going to shoot? Does that mean he's not going to shoot? He continues on the lack of shooting by Ben.
Yeah, but I'm not concerned about it as much as everybody else is. I'm really not. I think he will, but I think he will, and I want to make him sure that he does it when he needs to do it, not because he just should take the shot. So I'm not being honest with you, Mike. I hear you and I hear everyone, but I'm not as concerned about it as everyone else. We're going to work every day, I can tell you that, on all his shots. But I really, for me with Ben, I just want to unlock him. Like, I want to give him the freedom to go play.
The freedom to go play. You know what that sounds like? That does sound like Brett Brown a bit, because we know the identity at times with this team was go take the ball, go play, Ben, go make plays, Joel Embiid, go make plays. Sometimes it hurt them, and sometimes they went out there and they did what they needed to do because they are special talents. Unlocking Ben Simmons, let him do what he wants. And I thought it was so interesting that he discussed the whole I don't want him just shooting kind of concept. Let's hear the beginning of this once again so we can hear exactly what Doc Rivers said about just taking shots to take shots.
And that's my goal with him. Yeah, but I'm not concerned about it as much as everybody else is. I'm really not. I think he will, but I think he will, and I want to make him sure that he does it when he needs to do it, not because he just should take the shot.
Boom. Why I think that's important. Giannis is willing, and we talk about how willing Giannis is. I think there's value in that. I think Ben Simmons needs to eventually be willing before he just becomes this guy who knocks down shots, right? That's not rocket science. It's pretty easy to comprehend that logic. But there are times where I feel, especially in the playoffs, where I just watched Giannis lose early and it was underwhelming for him. He took shots to prove he was willing. But guess what? Those shots, it hurt the team. And he did that a bunch of times. And those shots hurt the team more than they helped the team. Now, eventually, you need to get over that hump. And like I said, you got to take steps before you get to a position where you are respected. You don't go from not respected to respected with the snap of your fingers. And that's why I praise development out of these NBA stars at 23, 24, 25, 26. It takes time to become that player. But I do think it's important to look at Ben Simmons specifically, and you think, oh, just shoot. Who cares? Just shoot. I don't know if necessarily that's the recipe for success, because I get why you want that. At the same time, teams want you to do it. Why would you allow teams to get what they want? You try and force them to be uncomfortable. You want to win your battles. A team goes into a game plan and goes, Ben, you can have it, dude. You can have it all you want. And I'm not saying that you just let them succeed with their game plan. You got to find a mix. You got to find a mix of making sure you say screw you, and at the same time, you don't just give them what they want. You know what I mean? Like, you got to find a combination of both. And sometimes with this narrative of you got to shoot, you got to shoot, you got to shoot, I don't care if it goes in, it doesn't actually help the basketball team. But Doc, if he doesn't shoot at all, would you think about sitting Ben Simmons?
I hope not. I hope I never have to get to that. I don't ever go into a job thinking about benching a guy. I go into a job thinking about trying to teach him what his shots are, and then getting him to take those shots. And, we'll figure out what they are once I get in the door.
Would you bench Ben Simmons? I hope not, he says. I hope I don't need to go down that road. And I think he's in a tough spot. It's not like he's been here before. He's new. To me, that sounded like an answer where he's just giving you coach speak. He doesn't know. He doesn't really have an idea. He doesn't know Ben Simmons. He doesn't really know his tendencies in terms of being his head coach. Sure, he can watch things on film and he can understand what type of player he is, but until you see him every day, until you see him in game situations as the head coach on the sideline of his team, you don't really know exactly how it's going to go down. He didn't write it off. I'll tell you that for free. He didn't write it off and say, no, I'm not benching him. He said he hopes he doesn't have to go down that road. And with that, it was like you can't just bash a guy and instantly walk into town, have an interview on the phone, and go, I'm going to bench him if he doesn't shoot. What type of respect is that towards Ben Simmons? It's not at all. And I know that Doc Rivers is going to have some intensity. He's going to be harder than Brett Brown was, and that's good. I think these players do need that to a degree. But at the same time, he is a player's coach as well. He is a mix of both, and that's good. I mean, you definitely still need to play that player side because you got to connect with these new athletes. It's 2020. It's not 1995 anymore where you can spit in your player's face, kick him in the nuts, and say, go play harder, you bastard. It doesn't work that way anymore. So Doc is a good mix. I thought it was just interesting to hear him say, I hope it doesn't get to that point, which he didn't rule it out. And you know me, I'm big on the whole, this is the players' league, man. It really is. But there are guys who have a different say. Pop can sit you. Spoelstra can sit you. Can Doc Rivers sit you? Yeah, probably. He has that type of background in this league that you just respect too damn much. But not anybody can. And those respected coaches, may I add, very limited around the league. And that's why when this fell on the lap of the 76ers, you had to take it. It was a no-brainer. I wasn't thrilled with any of the other options. I would have been okay with Ty Lue. I think it's valuable that he's in all the conversations every year about being a head coach in certain organizations. I value that. I didn't see the fit with D'Antoni, but when you hear Doc Rivers' name, it just speaks volume and speaks higher than anybody else in play on the market. It was a no-brainer, and that's why I was excited, because I talk about how, there's limited coaches in this league that have this type of personality, and Doc's one of them. The difference is, though, the 3-1 series blown leads involved behind his name and the underwhelming stuff behind his name is in play. It's in play. It just depends on how much you value that being him. How much is that Doc Rivers? How much is that the teams that he had? Did you really believe in the Lob City stuff? This year, I would say it was definitely underwhelming for him to lose to the Denver Nuggets, the 3-1 series lead, having double-digit leads throughout those closeout games. But Paul George sucked. And that Clippers team, it had a vibe of the 76ers. They just didn't really have it all year long. And whether you want to put that on Doc Rivers or the players, that's up for you to come up with that decision. It seemed like they had this whole, and it's a common theme. The Boston Celtics when they had Kyrie. This year with the 76ers. Well, this past season, that is. And this past season with the Clippers. There's always teams every year that have this big hype and they fall flat on their face. It just happened to be the Sixers this year, but it happens to every team there's always a team every year where that actually does happen. So let's move along a bit. Let's get to the Joel Embiid side of things.
And then with Joel, he's just so darn versatile, He's a post player. He's a three-point shooter. I love to play him more at the elbows. I love to have the ball in his hands more, getting the second actions. I think the one thing from afar, we have to create more movement, space and movement with this group, and we have to get them to buy into it.
The spacing, the movement, absolutely things you love to hear without a doubt. I will say, though, there's a difference between saying it and actually executing it, and I think it's going to be very difficult with this current roster to make things flow perfectly. I like Joel Embiid at the elbow. I like second action. I like thinking about him being utilized differently than just a, hey, get down low type of guy. I think that there's going to be many moments where he does get down low and he uses his body to dominate in the paint. I think there's going to be times where he's worked at the elbow. There's going to be times where he's out by the perimeter. That's the nature of the beast as a big man in this league. Look at the way Jokic is used. I want to see Joel Embiid utilized that way. Now, two different players. I think the facilitation part of Jokic's game is by far on another level than Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid has more finesse, has more raw talent, two different styles of play, but the way that they utilize the big man out of Jokic, I think you can find ways to maybe do that with Joel Embiid as well. But look at Jokic. He sets up the plays from the top of the key. That's the big man who gets screamed at all the time here in Philadelphia. Get on the low block! That guy who screams. Well, if you watch Jokic succeed, he sets up a lot at the top of the key. He sets up the offense from not in the paint. So that's just how basketball is in this era. That doesn't mean you will never see Joel Embiid post up, but there's so many different ways to utilize a man with a skill set like Embiid. And I like the fact of thinking about him at the elbow. And I think there's so much for him to learn in this sport, and I hope Doc Rivers can provide that. I really hope that he finds a way to provide that type of information for Joel Embiid. And this is a perfect segue for pick and roll basketball. Because let's be realistic. Brett Brown did not use the pick and roll much, and Doc Rivers likes it. The question asked, by the way, was, can you get Joel Embiid to be a better pick and roll player?
And you will absolutely, yeah, I can. I first of all, I think he is anyway. And you will absolutely see him in more. I can guarantee you that.
You need to get Joel Embiid in more pick-and-roll basketball. I just feel he needs to get better at it as well. Now, you can look at this one of two ways. Was he bad at it because they never really used it under Brett Brown? Okay, that's fair. He didn't get many reps. It's not like that was a system thing where they constantly used the pick-and-roll with Joel Embiid. Or you can go, he started basketball so late. There is an art to setting a screen. There is an art to rolling to the basket. There is an art in so many little things in basketball that's not common to the naked eye when you're just watching the game. You watch the way these big men who are phenomenal at setting picks set picks. There is art to it, and I just don't think that Joel Embiid was taught properly, and it's not his fault, but it is a reality. It's not an excuse, but it's a natural thing. When you start something so late in your life, and then you get thrown into the professional level where you are fantastic at majority of the things that you do, arguably the best in the game in that position, and you're just that good elsewhere in the game, it's hard to then look at your flaws and be like, oh, I got to be a better pick and roll player. It's not easy. It's hard to learn. It's a tough task. Can Doc Rivers, can he help Joel Embiid take that next step when it comes to the pick and roll game? Well, he's going to have to. If they're going to succeed under Doc Rivers, you are going to need to. And speaking of pick and roll ball, perfect segue to Tobias Harris.
You know, it's funny. I thought with the Clippers where we really unlocked him was we kept moving him back and forth from the 3 and the 4. And we really threw teams off because he's a matchup nightmare. When he's a big 3 against a small 3, he dominates. When he's a quick 4 against a slow 4, he dominates. And I thought we did a great job of keeping him in those spots when the other team had that other part on the floor. The other thing we put him in is he had never been in pick and rolls. And we put him into a lot of those. But we didn't do a lot of, 3, 4, 5 pick and rolls. We did a lot of 3-1. We put him in pick and rolls where if they make a switch, it's to his advantage. He's a straight line driver, and I think we're going to get him back to doing that. I thought just watching him over the last year, he tried to do a lot with the ball. I like when he's a quick decision player. I think he's a terrific player.
A lot on Tobias Harris there, and I think it's important because we're going to need Tobias Harris to be a different version of himself. We're going to need that 42% from 3 type player that he was under Doc Rivers in Los Angeles. And I think hearing Doc Rivers speak about that pick and roll game and not only just doing a standard pick and roll with the big man, but let's talk about a pick and roll specifically with the 1. And that changes the way that you are defended and you think about the pick and things of that nature and the switch and getting the mismatch that you want. That's going to help out Tobias Harris's game. Now, once again, in theory, that sounds amazing and that sounds like something that will benefit Tobias Harris, but at the same time, last year, Tobias Harris was open for a lot of shots. Tobias Harris was missing said shots. So he's going to have to execute. This all sounds great and dandy, but Tobias Harris, who has been underwhelming and hasn't performed to the level that we need him to perform, he's going to have to shoot the ball and make his shots at the same time. The pick and roll game, I think, will help. He had success already utilizing that, and he talked about the straight line type method. All right, I'm all for it. Look, I saw him make plays, and I saw him score points under Doc Rivers before with this same mentality and using this scheme set up for him and putting the ball in his hands and letting him operate. Getting the mismatch that he wants, whether it's at the 3 or 4, I can get behind it. But then these players have to make their shots. And there were plenty of times last year where, whether you hate the scheme or what, Tobias Harris flat out missed his shots and sucked. So I look at Tobias, I'm like, yo, you got a guy here who you have more of a connection with, who you played with, and who put you in great positions. Now it's on you more so than ever. Now there's no damn excuses. None. Let's finish up with, how do you view the roster, Doc Rivers?
Well, number one, it's a good roster to start with, with Shake and Matisse and Al and Tobias and Josh, Corkman. You already have started there. Like you're 7-8 deep right when you start with your lineup. And so you do have enough players. I've heard all the things that we may need, a point guard. Every team needs one. I just coached the entire season with the Clippers without a point guard, without even great passing. Yet we were still 3rd in the league in offense, 2nd in efficiency. A year before that, we didn't have the stars, and we were in the top 5 in scoring. So we'll figure that out. I always start with what I have, Mike, first. and then I'll build out from there. But every team in the NBA, when you lose in the playoffs, you come away with three things. Number one, you need more shooting. I don't know one team that has said that they wish they didn't have one more shooter or one more playmaker on their team, the team that loses. And then the third one is always the one that moves around. Is it team toughness? Is it discipline? Those are all the peripheral things that a team needs.
Okay, so a lot to dive into when it comes to this comment. I agree with the last thing he was saying when it comes to, things outside of the court, and that's why you brought Doc Rivers in. That's the reason why. Brett Brown, you can say he was soft on the players. He lost his voice, no doubt about it. There's no denying it. It was not the same, and after the amount of time that he was here for, that's natural. That's not common for what Brett Brown did to stay in one team and stay with one organization for that long. Messages run dry. Whether you're a great coach or a bad coach, look at Andy Reid. Andy Reid, great example. He is a phenomenal coach, arguably the second best coach in the NFL underneath of Bill Belichick, right? There was a moment in time where he just ran his course here in this city, and it's time to move on. Now, I am not saying that Brett Brown is even close to the level of Andy Reid. But messages run dry. And for Brett Brown, his message ran dry, and I think that's what Doc Rivers can bring to this organization. He did talk about the depth of this team, and I do look at the depth, and I question what is he looking at. So, on paper, you can look at the starting five. And is this going to be the starting five? I don't know, but let's just look at it. Ben Simmons, Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, Al Horford, Joel Embiid. After that, it's what? Matisse Thybulle, Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz. Is that a playoff bench? To me, it's not even close. It's not even close to a playoff bench. I think about some veteran players that you need off the bench. Factor maybe Mike Scott, or you want to go Mike Scott in there at some point, fine. But you need veteran players. Shake Milton, while I'm intrigued for his skill set, that doesn't scream a guy I need help off the bench in the postseason. And I understand. You are going to go heavy on the starters in playoffs. You're only talking about a limited amount of minutes off the bench. But those limited amount of minutes off the bench still do carry weight. And I don't think that Matisse Thybulle, with where he is in his career, Shake Milton with where he is in his career, and Furkan Korkmaz, who is an embarrassment in the playoffs, that doesn't fly. That doesn't work. I don't think this roster can work the way that it is currently put together. So you can hear about him talk about all these things, and some of them, they make me excited. I'm not going to lie. There are some things I'm getting sucked down the road of, okay, hopefully he can fix that. Hopefully he can fix this. But we're talking about getting sucked, and we also got sucked into thinking they were going to the NBA Finals last year because on paper it looked amazing. Well, same here on paper, Doc Rivers being the head coach. Yeah, that's flashy. But there are so many flaws with the spacing, with the non-shooting of Ben Simmons, with Joel Embiid's play. There's so many problems. Al Horford, does he even fit with this damn team? I hate to end on negative because I do think that this helps the team more than it hurts the team, but I just want to put a step back on this, if you will. Maybe take off the goggles a bit and be like, hold on. While I understand what he's saying and I get that he's going to add to this team, to get sucked right back in to think that this is all fixed because of a head coach, there's a lot of problems, organizational flaws throughout this entire franchise. Sadly, it starts with Joshua Harris, and he isn't going anywhere. By the way, this episode of Sports Talk with Broads is sponsored by Orbit Energy and Power. With over 20 years of experience in the solar industry, they are home to your experts in residential and commercial projects. They are dedicated to making sure your project is completed easily and properly by using high-quality materials and trained professionals to get the job done right. Not only solar energy and Orbit Energy and Power, but this episode is also sponsored by BetQL. If you are a sports bettor or looking to get into sports betting, BetQL has all the information you need. It has the analysis for each game, the trends, where the sharp money is headed, the data that you need to give yourself and to put yourself in the best position to make an educated guess. I've been doing this for about a month now, let's say, and I've been going where the professional money is headed. And all the information is right there. It shows you the sharp money is going here. Well, okay, that's where all the pros are going. I'll do the same damn thing. Boom, cashing in left and right. And you could say I'm a millionaire. No, I'm not a millionaire, but I am definitely cashing in all the time. And if you use promo code BROADS20 at BetQL.com, you get 20% off of your first payment. And the amount of money that you spend on BetQL, it's pennies compared to what you cash out when you're betting on NFL, the NBA Finals, playoff baseball. So make sure you check out all the information down below. We're also doing a weekly pick'em pool, weekly NFL pick'em pool, weekly prizes, grand prize courtesy of Rosnov Jewelers. Their championship bracelet information is down below. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you next time.